Jacques Viau de Lesperance, born 1645, in La Trinité in Clisson, Nantes, Breton, France. According to records, he was an only child. He would marry Madeleine Plouard, born around 1653 in France. Together, they would have 7 children. Jacques was the first Viau in these branches to migrate from France to Quebec, Canada. He's also the first ancestor to use the D term in his surname. This translates basically to a saying, as if to say Jacques Viau from Lesperance or of Lesperance. It acts sort of like a nickname. It's August 17th, 1665. Jacques arrives in Quebec as a Carignan soldier in the La Fredière Company. He was 20 years old. The Carignan Salier Regiment was a Piedmont French military unit formed by merging 2 other regiments in 1659. Approximately 1,200 men arrived in New France in the middle of 1665. Most of the settlers in the New World were indentured laborers who left New France at the end of their 5-year contracts and returned home. The harsh winters, the shortage of women, and the threat of being carried off by the Iroquois led to very few Frenchmen wanting to stay, and thus unable to build the population of the colony. Throughout the struggle, authorities of New France sent desperate appeals for help to Paris, only to be informed that France was fully engaged in a war with Spain that did not end until 1659, so there were no soldiers to spare. However, when the Carignan regiment finally arrived, they were welcomed as saviors. Although the majority of the soldiers returned to France in 1668, about 450 remained behind to settle in Canada. These men were highly encouraged to marry, being offered land as an incentive. By all means, it looks like Jacques took them up on that offer. During this time, back in Jacques' homeland, the bubonic plague strikes. The Great Plague was one of the largest outbreaks in history. He left just in time and decided to stay and migrate to the New World. Perhaps this was one of the factors. Perhaps it has something to do with our next historical insight. It's 1669. Hoping to boost the French presence in New France, King Louis XV sent hundreds of young women to the colony, known as the Filles du Roi, translated as the King's Daughters. Between 1663 and 1673, women aged 13 to 28 braved the weeks-long, treacherous Atlantic voyage in hopes of finding a mate in the new colonies. Most of them were orphaned commoners from Paris, Normandy, and western France. These arrivals remained in the care of nuns until a marriageable match could be made. Mary Plouard was a Fille du Roi. As in France, these women, like our ancestor, were expected to be able to feed and clothe their families. Each received a hope chest containing personal accessories, a comb, 2 coifs, which was a type of hood, one made of taffeta and the other of gauze. They were also given a belt, a pair of hose, a pair of shoes, a pair of gloves, a bonnet, shoelaces, and 4 sets of laces. These items were difficult to find on the shores of the St. Lawrence. So the chest also contained sewing supplies, about 100 needles, a case, and thimble, white and gray thread, scissors, pins, 2 knives, and cloth fine enough to make handkerchiefs, collars, wimples, and pleated sleeves. These young women faced a challenging transition to rural life. Like Mary Plouard, many came from the cities and didn't know how to perform the manual labor required for life on the frontier. Shaky relations with neighboring nations of First People and harsh winters complicated the picture. Though some 300 filles de roi remain unwed, those who tied the knot helped double the colony's population from 3,200 in 1663 to 6,700 less than a decade later. Each married couple was given an assortment of livestock and goods to start them off in their new life together. They were given a pair of chickens and pigs, an ox, a cow, and 2 barrels of salted meat. The king's gift of 50 livres is believed to have been a customary addition to the dowry. Once married, there was an incentive to have large families. A yearly pension of 300 livres was granted to families with 10 children, rising to 400 for 12, and more for larger families. Today, the majority of French Canadians can trace their lineage back to at least one of the king's daughters, as you will see on more than several branches. It's 1670. Jacques marries Madeleine, a fille de roi, when he is 25. His mother passes away that same year. 1671, his first child, Bertrand, is born. 1675, his father passes away. Jacques is 30. 1681, his 3-year-old son Jacques dies. 3 years later, his wife passes away at age 31. In November, he gets married to Marie-Therese Robin. He is 39. In 1685, Mary Madeleine is born. It's 1721. Marie-Therese Robin passes away. 2 years later, 1723, Jacques passes away in Longueuil, Quebec, at age 78, living a long, storied life.